today, I got a request to do a video that I could not ignore, and it came from Loch Ness Monster 99. Do you think you'd be willing to make a video about how to plot a novel? I have so many ideas and I love writing, but I really want to plot everything out and I don't know where to begin. Thanks! Well, Loch Ness Monster, I'll try to do what I can. So the plot is obviously very important to your novel. This is what constitutes a story, basically, your plot. Because without it, you've just got a bunch of people mulling around, not doing anything, or a world just sitting there. Now, we as humans are creatures of habit, and the way our brains work, we love to see patterns in things. And every story has a pattern to it, a shape, a formula, if you will, that has been molded for thousands of years, ever since the first story was told. Okay, so it's pretty perfect. I wouldn't suggest veering off of it too severely, unless you really want to confuse your readers and have them not be able to follow it, which I wouldn't advise, because subconsciously or not, we all go into a story expecting to see this pattern, this familiar arc, which begins with the excitement of possibility at the beginning, the complications, the challenges, the struggles in the middle, and then a nice resolution at the end, where something is overcome and something changes, something is different. Looking up this story arc, or the shape of a plot, you're gonna find this picture all over the place. But this is too simple and basic. This is basic, okay? I enjoy a little more complexity in my stories. So let's take this shape and make it a little bit more complex. Let's break down the plot, okay? The plot is partitioned into 5 acts. Some people say 3, but I choose 5 because that's the way Shakespeare wrote, and I figure if it's good enough for Shakespeare, it's good enough for me, right? And whether you realize it or not, pretty much every story falls into these acts. Let's begin with Act 1, shall we? I suppose you could also begin with an Act 0, which is basically just the backstory, but the true plot begins at Act 1. And since we're going to be making our own plot diagram graph thingy, Act 1 basically looks like this. Act 1 is basically just an introduction to your setting and an introduction to your main characters. This is where the seeds are planted for what's going to come in the rest of the plot. And also one very important seed, which some people tend to skip, but I think is very important, and that is called the inciting incident. This is something that occurs that allows for the plot to happen. This isn't the beginning of your plot proper. This is what, you know, cause and effect. This is the cause and the plot is the effect, okay? This doesn't necessarily have to happen in Act 1. It doesn't for me, it actually happens before the story in my book. But it needs to be somehow referenced, at least in Act 1, so that we know that there's a reason for the plot to happen. It's a little tricky to think. Put it into examples. In my book, the inciting incident is Grayson's dream, which actually happens immediately before the story takes place. Yeah, and say in the Hunger Games, the inciting incident is Prim's name being drawn from the lottery. The Hunger Games get started off really quick, so there isn't much of an Act 1, but I think it's still loosely followed. And Act 1 should take around 30 pages, okay? At that point, people are gonna start to get a little, they're gonna start looking at their watches and be like, well, let's get to the plot, okay? This is the reason I didn't like Red Rising, is because the plot didn't happen until like page 200 or something. I was just like, there's so much going on, yet nothing's happening. Okay, now Act 2 is going to, you guessed it, go up a little bit, but we're gonna add some little divots, you know, a little wavering, because it's not a straight climb, okay? There are what are called minor reversals all throughout here, and that's just basically plot points that take away from your main character's goals. There are tons in Progeny of Gods. For instance, Brown saying, peace out, like you're on your own. Okay, more complications and more minor reversals are never a bad thing, because it makes it so much more dramatic, okay? I mean, you don't want to have too many, but you get the point. Anyway, what signifies the beginning of Act 2, here, bazoom, is the first major plot point, or the beginning of your plot, which is, of course, in Progeny of Gods, the release of Secula. In the Hunger Games, this is where Katniss volunteers herself instead of Prim. So now hopefully you can better see what the exciting incident is with this in mind. So if Prim hadn't been chosen, Katniss wouldn't have volunteered. If Grayson hadn't had that dream, he probably wouldn't have released Secula. And let's throw in my buddy Shakespeare here too, just to see that this does cover every genre. The inciting incident in Act 1 would be when Romeo and Juliet see each other for the first time, instantly fall in love. And the first plot point, beginning of the plot, is actually in the balcony scene, because it takes place at the beginning of Act 2, when they profess their love for each other and say, we're committed to this, let's do this. And they get married the next day. And Act 2 is defined by the protagonist, the main character, reacting to whatever the heck's going on, usually something that the villain has done, or whatever the plot is. So in Progeny of Gods, it's Grayson just trying to keep up with Secula. In the Hunger Games, this is going through all the preparations before they even get to the Hunger Games. So going to the Capitol and getting all prim and proper and going on TV and doing all this stuff. Everything is happening to her. So I've written here, Act 2, reacting. And it's from pages 30 to 90. There's no like, it obviously depends on the story. There's no like perfect formula. So for instance, Progeny of Gods, I think it's even further. I have a big intro because it's a fantasy book and it takes a lot to build up. But for the Hunger Games, it's not even this long. Katniss volunteers in chapter 2, and then the Hunger Games themselves starts at like chapter 10, I think. I don't know what page that is. So yeah, it can vary. But generally you want to move the plot forward as fast as you can. All right, Act 3. There's gonna be a little bit of a dip here after Act 2, a little bit of a reversal. In my book, the characters learn some things, you know, some things happen. I don't want to spoil it, but there's a little bit of a reversal, okay? The characters feel like shit for a little bit. But then they come out of it learning that now instead of reacting, they need to act. So Act 3 is going to be the longest act, and it is your protagonists actively acting through their plot now. This is also defined by the first goal that they have. Primary goal, which ultimately turned out to be the wrong goal, but still they need a primary goal. So for Katniss, this is the Hunger Games. So basically her first goal is just survive. And this will be the longest part of your book. This is this is the meat of it. So it's gonna generally be anywhere from page 50 to page 250, okay? This is a giant chunk. I think all of part 2 in my book is Act 3, so that's a third of the book. That's more than a third. So much happens in my fucking Act 3. And Act 3 leads up to, oh, you didn't see that. I just drew a huge line. Probably not that big. But the major reversal, okay? Major reversal. This is when they realize that the goal that they've been trying to achieve is wrong, and a bunch of bad stuff happens. In the Hunger Games, this is where Rue gets killed, and this is where Katniss kills that boy because he killed Rue. And so she's dealing with a lot of internal struggles, and she decides that instead of just surviving this, she's going to now win the Hunger Games for Rue. In Romeo and Juliet, this is where Mercutio gets killed, and where Romeo then goes off and kills Tybalt and then gets exiled. So this is rock bottom in your plot, okay? Not because it's bad, but because everything is just going so wrong for your main characters and you think winning is impossible, okay? But it's this terrible, terrible state that makes the reader want to root for your main character even more, and it just keeps you locked in, like, how is my character that I love and I struggled with through all of this, how are they gonna get out of it, you know? And this is where that addictive nature in stories comes from. Even though it's hard to write, you don't want to put your characters in this situation because you love them and whatever, but it's so much better, so much more rewarding for you as a writer, for the reader, everything. You need to beat the shit out of your characters in order for this story to be beautiful. And at the end of Act 3, this is where it happens. Now, Act 4, if you didn't see this coming already, this is where the plot goes. Your character comes through this terrible moment and now has more clarity, sees what the true goal is, it's got all their crap aligned in their head, and they know how to defeat whatever challenge they're going to overcome, and they fight to do so, and this is the highest point in your book. This is the climax. This is where all the excitement is building up to. This is where they overcome their challenge. So pages, it's gonna be around 200 to 375, and then Act 5, everything is resolved. The tension drops way down because, you know, everything's overcome. There's no more tension, there's no more, you know, this is winning. Whatever happened here at the climax is a huge release of tension. Therefore, not much to draw the reader on anymore. You want to wrap up your story as fast as you can. I mean, what more do you discuss? You know, you don't want to set up your second book or whatever. You engage people into reading your second book if you're writing a series by leaving cliffhangers, by not explaining that much thing. I mean, explain what you need to, but. So Act 5 is here, and I'm not even gonna put page numbers because basically wrap it up as fast as you can. And there we have it. Yeah, true goal, resolution, okay, great. So I hope that helped, hope that made sense. And it's also helpful for me to do, you know, little refreshers because I actually am doing this whole process right now with book number 2. So this was helpful for me. Thank you, Monster. What was your name? Loch Ness Monster. If anyone else has any questions about writing, please leave them below and I'll do my best to help you out. So, okay, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.